few people who are not able to be here live, but quite a few more that are looking for the recording. So that's all good. I'll give a bit of an edit and send this through. And it's interesting, actually, preparing for this webinar. My intention of this was more based on just personal experience in my own personal life, and then also with clients. And I just sort of felt like really wanted to bring up the subject. And what's been interesting is, since I've sort of been preparing for this webinar, is some of the research. So I'm definitely going to do a follow-up on this, and I'll do one of my podcast episodes on this, because there's actually so much fascinating information, and diving down a bit of a rabbit hole that makes a lot of sense. So I think it's really, really, really relevant, and I'm quite excited to share some. So I will mute, but there will be an opportunity for a little bit of interaction, especially towards the end of the chat and the presentation, just because I'd love to find out a little bit more about how you are experiencing these aspects, this HSP. I quite like it as an HSP. Sounds really special. I like that part of it. It's like, I am an HSP. However, it's interesting, as I've delved into this, that how that also actually is a thing. And there is massive research. There is massive there's TED Talks, there is lots of Google presentations. It's actually quite amazing when you go down the rabbit hole. I actually thought it was more in our little world, in the holistic scene, that it was a thing, but it's a thing. So what I find fascinating too, as we go into this, I wanted to share some of the experiences that I personally have had with working with clients. You tend to get clients who align, and people who end up working with you for a little while longer have got something that you're offering something that they can relate to. And often you're relating to them because you have experience around it, or you have an understanding of it. And so that's the angle that I sort of come in from, is just personal experience, through personal and professional experience. However, what's also my experience, and the angle that I want to bring in as well, is my theory on what the superpowers of this are. So I want to share initially just a little bit of like looking into this a bit more with the research and what's known about being an HSP and what it means and how it shows up in your life, and how you can know whether you are an HSP, and also whether you are working with people. So this is also really relevant for Phil mentioned that he may have clients who are HSP, and then also some of us have children, family members, people we are engaged with in our lives who have that. And I will talk about that, are that. I will also talk a little bit about how I feel it is showing up in the world more and more. So I want to share a little bit about what is out there and known, and then I also want to share a little bit what I think, my own personal experience of it. Okay, so one of my big mottos right now, and that I say all the time, is hold everything lightly. So that includes everything we're going to talk about. That includes every research you may ever go into. So where you may be looking into things, what other people have found out, where we are with the knowledge of it at the moment, and what I am sharing. Because obviously I am sharing from my perspective, I'm sharing from my experience and my take on things. So again, hold everything lightly. One of the biggest things that I think is super important, even in this context, and particularly in this context, and you'll see as we go a little bit more why, as an HSP, you can take in a lot. There's a lot of information that is available to you. And so it is easy to take in everything without a filter. So one of the most important things is to become very soul aligned or internally aware, or being very clear about what's yours and what isn't yours. And I think that's one of the most important parts of this webinar, is at the end of this webinar that there is an awareness and a toolkit of what's yours and what isn't yours, and how do you decipher that. And then you can go out and use your superpowers. Because I think a lot of the time people are challenged with some of these traits because they are so permeable and so receptive and so inclined to receive and perceive on this higher level. So does that make sense? Cool. So it will be a little bit presentation style, and one thing I really like is PowerPoints. So I will have a PowerPoint presentation. Ultimately, I feel my strength or my desire is teaching style. So that's kind of, I like to teach. So that will be how I will be presenting. So I'm just going to stop share the music. That's quite nice having that in the background. Works well for an HSP, keeps calming the nervous system. All right, so let us begin so that we're not here for too long, because as we know, we may not have that long attention span. All right. So I'm going to do a little screen share here. Okay, so is that coming up okay? Are we seeing this? Give me a thumbs up. Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, cool. All right, so unleashing your HSP superpower. And I truly believe it is a superpower, and I feel it is such a gift and I feel that we all have the ability to heighten our senses and to be more perceptive. I feel that we are moving into a world and we are evolving as a humanity. And I feel like as a humanity, we have the ability to perceive and experience on so much, like such a huge level, such a huge awareness. And often we're not even or tapping into all of what we can be. And some people have the ability naturally to perceive on these higher frequency levels. And that's what I feel is part of being a highly sensitive person. We will talk a little bit about some of the practical aspects as well. So one thing we're just going to look at, what does it mean to be an HSP, like a highly sensitive person? There are many factors that come into it. And when you go down the rabbit hole, when you look at some of the research and things like that, there are biological factors. So what I found super fascinating is that there are actual biological aspects of it. There are, with an HSP, there are actually a response on the neurotransmitters. So the way that actually the brain works, there is a more activity in the way that the neurotransmitters are perceiving on a higher level. There is a thing called mirror neurons, and I'm sure that we all have different levels of awareness of some of the languaging, but mirror neurons basically is where we are mirroring, where we perceive, and so if somebody yawns, you yawn. When we're babies, you put the spoon out to the baby and you open your mouth and the baby opens the mouth. Those are things that we just naturally do, mirror neurons. And the mirror neuron response is higher in a HSP person. So one aspect of that is that they are perceiving, and this is what's super interesting. We'll go into that a little bit more, but there are actual biological factors. And one thing we're going to talk about a little bit as well, and there is a lot of research, and that's why I wanted to do a follow-up webinar if you're interested. What I found super fascinating is some of the traits that an HSP person expresses can be sometimes related to, people would call it ADHD, or even on the spectrum of autism at times, because there is things like sensory overload. So the sensory overload. And so often when people call it being on the spectrum, you can't, the light's too much, the noise is too much, there's overwhelming in surroundings and environment. And there is actually research where some people have been literally diagnosed with things like ADHD, and actually they're an HSP. So there is more and more information coming out now where there is a difference. And so when you think about that, where people are on medication for ADHD, and really, if we just looked at, okay, but what if they're more just highly sensitive people? And we'll look at this a little bit more on what you can do about, like, how you can function in the world, in this overwhelming world. So I found that really fascinating, how there is actual biological differences. There is also a different response to dopamine, to serotonin. There is a different response to what they call norepinephrine. So it's the sort of stimulating sort of adrenaline type of response, and that activity response. In ADHD people, the medication is actually a stimulant. Whereas for an HSP person, that wouldn't work for them. They're not going to release or diminish their stimulants. They're not going to, that's going to just overwhelm them even more because of the response in the brain. So it's actually quite different. And the other thing about it is the nervous system response is different as well. So one other thing is we look at our environmental factors. So what that means is obviously how we respond to our environment. But the other thing is your upbringing, your environment. So one thing that will show a little bit later on, I feel there is a difference. Some people who present as highly sensitive people, and they may not be ADHD in the actual medical term, but they may be having a trauma response. So their past traumas have created a conditioning in their nervous system. So their nervous system is highly stimulated due to trauma response, childhood trauma response, that sort of thing. So then they are presenting as an HSP. Or they may actually be a highly sensitive person in the way that I'm going to talk about it. And that has caused a trauma response because of the way that they were responded to in their upbringing. So if they were in an environment where they weren't understood, that can create a trauma response as well. So then that has an effect on the way that their nervous system's been conditioned. And so now that can create behavioral patterns because of misunderstanding in their upbringing. So the environmental factors come into that. There is biological factors, there are environmental factors, and then that awareness of sensory overload, the fact that like certain environments there is a limit to how long you can handle being in a certain environment. There is, noises, the way that, like, if you're in a room with too many people, if you're overwhelmed with your own workload, your own home environment, all these sort of things. And the way I'm going to be looking at this is understanding why that is. So again, we could break it down a little bit more into, okay, so what is ADHD? What is an autism spectrum? What are some of the trauma responses, as opposed to an HSP from a more energetic perspective, which is one aspect I'm going to bring into. Does that make sense a little bit? Is that sort of easy to follow? Cool. Okay. So again, we're getting an overview, and I would love to go a bit deeper at another time. So another aspect of being an HSP is an HSP, a highly sensitive person, are generally very, very intuitive. So they have often this knowing. There's just this awareness of, well, I just kind of know, or there is this intrinsic guidance and connection. And again, this is where some of the trauma can come in, because if we're not aware of this in the upbringing and that isn't cultivated, then there is this mixed messaging to life, because the outside world is telling you one thing and your inside world is telling you something completely different. And so then there's this mistrust to either the outside world or the inside world, and there's this confusion. So a lot of the time, if there isn't an opportunity or there isn't a pathway to actually develop being and having a connection to being an HSP, then it can actually create that trauma response and this unpacking later on as adults, as we get to this stage now. And it's easy to see when we do have that, because we often tend to gravitate towards things that are more working with intuition and energy and that sort of thing. That's often what we tend to gravitate towards because of that internal guidance of that. Being energetically sensitive. Now, if you have an environment where this is very understood and understanding what it means to be energetically sensitive, if you're in an environment with friends, with coaches, with teachers, even with family and just whatever surroundings you're in, where energy is understood and where living energetically and perceiving energetically is understood, then that is something you just cultivate and you just sort of grow with. And it's just something that you learn to perceive and understand. Whereas if you're not in that environment, let's just kind of say, okay, it's a very 3D environment where everything is very materially focused, then we can feel the odd one out. It feel like we feel foreign in this environment. Something's missing, something's not quite right. And there is, again, especially if you think about like as a child growing up and you're perceiving so much more and you're aware of the energetics and you're picking up so much more, so much information, it's super confusing because there isn't a place for it, or there isn't even wording around it, there isn't a conversation around it, and maybe the environment you're in, they're not like that. And everything's really practical. And it's like, so you're the sensitive one. A lot of the time it's like, oh, you're too sensitive. You feel too deeply. You're so emotional. Why are you so dramatic? Why do you have to go so deep with everything? Why can't you just take, it is just what it is. Stop questioning things. And it's impossible for an HSP to live like that, to be that focused on the material only, the 3D aspect of that sort of thing. It's not like, and this is where what I also want to bring into this is the need for an HSP to have both, to know how to live in this world. And that's the superpower, because a lot of the time an HSP might actually go off the rails because they can't find their way in this world. So then they're looking into that energetic realm, and if they haven't got guidance or if they haven't found their way there, they could either get lost into that spiritual realm or in that energetic realm, or they could go looking for it in not the healthiest ways. And that happens a lot of the time too. So there is also a natural spiritual connection, or just an understanding of multidimensional realms. It's a very natural way to be. And luckily, we are able to find more communication and information in that realm now. Like there is lots more talking like that. 5D is nothing weird to say now, and beyond. And we have access to 1 million podcasts that you can find your tribe on Spotify. So it's a great thing that we can find some guidance in this way. Okay, I'm going to move through this and then we'll have some more interaction. So there are some gifted things about being an HSP, and people who have sort of gone off. See, if you don't have guidance, then you just go off into your own little world and you forget to do your hair, like Albert Einstein. But we have amazing HSPs in history. Albert Einstein, Vincent van Gogh, there's Emily Dickinson, we've got Mahatma Gandhi, Princess Diana, Frida Kahlo, Carl Jung, and so many more. And you can understand when we feel into these people that there is an element of creativity. There's an element of a broad inner world. There is a channeling, like a lot of these people. I definitely add Nicholas Tesla in there and things like that as well. These people who are multidimensionally connected. So there is, and it doesn't mean that every single HSP is this genius and bringing something brilliant into the world. What it means is this is the realm of relatability, and you can also see that a lot of these people haven't always had the easiest life. There is also a journey to take, and there is challenges to being in this, and to being this, to receive this much information. So at this stage, there is, in the research side of things, they consider that probably 1 in 5 people is an HSP. I believe that that's going to be more and more and more, because I also believe that a lot of people are born highly sensitive, and maybe on a soul level, they have incarnated many more times, and their meat suit is a lot more permeable. So their physical incarnation is maybe a little bit already, frequency-wise higher. And however, I also believe that it's a matter of training and cultivating more of that perception on a higher level. So I do believe that there is a scale of how much of an HSP you are or can be. I think you can cultivate it. I think you can become more sensitive. But there are, as we said before, in the biological side, traits and certain qualities that the physical being already has that is different to people who aren't identifying as an HSP. Okay, so I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly just so that we get an idea of it all and we have an understanding of it, and then we will kind of work with it a little bit. One thing that I consider superpowers are, first of all, empathy. So when we think about the mirror neurons is what helps us to be empathetic. Because if I'm sitting with you and you are experiencing an emotion, as an HSP, I am experiencing that emotion. It's just non-negotiable. You can't turn that off. Because not only are you perceiving it through the mirror neurons, like I'm seeing it, so I'm feeling it. However, you're also energetically wired, and I like this image on the right here, that spiritual connection image. If you imagine this framework, this grid that is constantly receiving and tapped into the energy field. So if I'm sitting with somebody and they are experiencing certain emotions, emotion, energy, and motion, so there is energy in their experience that I can totally perceive, not only through mirror neurons, because I'm seeing the expressions, but also I am receiving, I am feeling the feeling. So that offers me an opportunity to be truly empathetic. And there's a difference to sympathetic. I can maybe go, oh yeah, I can see how that could feel this way. Or there's a difference to, I am totally understanding how you're feeling. I can feel what you're feeling. And this is where this is a superpower, and it can be a challenge. Because if we feel too much, it's so overwhelming when you're just feeling everything from everybody and every situation. So we're looking at it, how is it a superpower, and how can we really cultivate the superpower? So the empathy, I think, is huge, and especially as we move forward, we sort of want to create a tribe of HSPs and like to be of support. And a lot of the time, a well-balanced HSP who is able to look after themselves and be balanced and stay grounded in themselves and their own energy is of such service, and they often end up being in a service industry where they are supporting coaches, counselors, teachers, leaders, the best, as long as they're able to maintain their own energy and nervous system and all of that as well. So creativity, again, if we think about, well, these people, but also this field of energy, if you're so tapped into the energy, if you're so tapped into your intuition, if you're so open and perceptive and receptive, then of course the creativity, just imagine a container. Imagine if you're a container and your thoughts and your brain and the mind and everything, the input that's come into your mind. Imagine if that what you had is what you had to draw on to be creative, so to get some ideas. Then it's kind of limited because you're just kind of moving those same pieces around. Whereas if that container was permeable and you had access to the infinite field of everything, and you're using intuition and an energetic perception to be inspired, and you kind of get out of the way and you're like a conduit, then the creativity level is infinite. And so a lot of the time, people who are HSP are the most creative because their creativity comes from everything, from not only the fact that they are open to receiving or creative influence. The other thing that I think is really powerful to know is attention to detail. So this can be things like again, this feeds into empathy and creativity. If you're seeing things that not everybody sees. So if you're able to perceive and see small details, so say from the empathy perspective, this is something that is really important to understand, is that if you're an HSP and you're having a conversation with somebody, that you are taking in tenfold more information, because not only are you taking in the words that you're hearing and having the conversation, not only are you taking in maybe some of the basic body language, but you're noticing every little thing on their face that changes, every little frown, every little detail in their face. You're also picking up the nuances in their voice, the tone in their voice. You're hearing the words behind the words, because not only are you hearing the conversation, picking up the details on the face and all that, but you are also receiving energetic information, like the emotional information, the meaning, the intention. There is so much more information you're taking in. And you don't necessarily know that at the time, but it does mean that your perception of that conversation may be different to the person's conversation and the intention, because you are taking in so much more information. So that added to that, if you are in an environment like, say, when you go to a shopping mall, when you go to certain things, not only are you aware of what is there, but there is so much more that you're taking in. So you're taking in so many more details. So the data that comes in is tenfold, so much. This can be positive in a creative way, because imagine if you have all that extra data coming in and now I want to create something new, my creativity levels are through the roof. It can be really positive for an empathetic way, because I know things about you. I'm perceiving things about you that you don't even maybe know, because there is things that you're not even aware of that you're feeling and experiencing, but I'm picking it up. And I'm not saying that we're all psychic and we're all like, oh, I know better than you. However, it is an awareness that there is a lot of the time more information, more data coming in. And that can be very overwhelming, as well as a superpower. So it's not about like, okay, we're all superhuman and we're so psychic and we know better, but it's more just understanding that this is what happens in a conversation as well. So this leads me to self-care, because in order to be an HSP, have the superpower and cultivate it, we need to be aware of our nervous system, our brain function, the level of data that comes in, integrating that data, and actually being able to function and use these superpowers. So we can be very overwhelmed. That first image, even just looking at it, is overwhelming. Is like so much, the colors, the noise, the people, the energy of it all. So there are certain things like lessening the data input. One of the best things in my life is my noise cancelling headphones. It was funny because I actually feel like I've got a dent in my head from wearing my noise cancelling headphones. And using things like certain sound frequency, making sure that you take time out. There is like really practical things. Again, there's so much more we can go into, especially in this area. It's a lot of what I do with clients, as well as understanding how to navigate all of this. There are practical things. This is one of the reasons I love the biohacking scene, because there is so much there that we can do to optimize the machine, cellular health, boost your mitochondria, have an understanding of what happens if my system is optimized and vitalized. Imagine if my physical system, my mitochondria, my gut health, my cellular system is able to hold more energy and to maintain a higher level of vitality. Then of course, I'm not going to be as overwhelmed as soon, because if you think we start with a certain level of vitality and everybody is having their energy drained by all the input and stimulus and data and all that. So if you are an HSP and you're perceiving more data, then your energy will drain quicker than a person who isn't receiving as much data. So like a person who is just a solid person who can handle just kind of grinding and carrying on, and they seem to have this infinite energy to just keep going, they may not be receiving as much data. Whereas an HSP is taking in so much energy, so all of a sudden the tank is empty. The pranic field, the vitality is depleted because there is more drawing on that field. So through things like the biohacking and all these other things, and making sure that we're not, that we take time to recharge and things like that, we're able to really, really maintain that high vitality and maintain your superpower. So some of the really powerful things, actually I'll go to this one first, is things like yoga. Amazing, super important. Yoga is great because you're looking after your physical body, you're stretching, you're strengthening, but you're also going in, you're also doing a bit of sense withdrawal, which is super important for an HSP. Obviously meditation, because meditation helps you to remind yourself of what's yours and what isn't yours, what's your internal world, what's the external world. So that's a really powerful thing. Yoga Nidra, it's such a powerful way, because it's like, I always consider the physical body like a cyborg, and you shut the cyborg down for a moment and you reset. So Yoga Nidra is an amazing way to do that. Muscle relaxation, like body rotation type of work, but actually contract and release, those sort of things. Obviously going into nature is super important. Grounding. I really love binaural beats, especially if I'm in a certain environment and I need to just sort of reset. Therapy, art therapy, journaling, energy work, CBT and EFT is great, cognitive behavioral therapy, because we can learn to decipher all the data input with that. I think it's a really useful way for us to understand the thinking and where it's coming from. EFT, the tapping, it's a great way to get your energy back into alignment, and obviously being in specific communities is a really powerful thing. Being in the community who may also be a HSP, or to have an understanding of it. So the thing that I find with being an HSP is that it's a potential, it's an opportunity to be the universe, to be connected to everything. image here is just totally how I see it being a superpower. It's receiving so much data, and not just on a mind level. And this is where I think it's super important to have an understanding of, not just on a mind level. It is a multi-sensory level. It's how the brain functions. There is an actual difference in your brain function. There's a difference in the nervous system. There is a difference in the energetic field and the reception in the energetic field. So the potential, if you are able to center yourself, ground yourself, find yourself within all of this data and information, then you have access to all of this, and that makes it a superpower. Then you can be of service to humanity, to friends, family, to your clients if you're working in that field. You can really tap into higher levels of creativity that don't necessarily come from the the human. It comes from the expanded version of you, of the expanded connection of the field. The fact that you can then be a visionary, you can also be a permission slip, an example. You can lead the way for others to understand of how we could live as community, how we could live more in harmony. The other thing is that an HSP person, because they are so sensitive to with the mirror neurons and things like that, they're generally absolutely intolerant of aggression and violence. And so it's really hard for people to see injustice and to say, watch a violent movie or watch something aggressive or be around aggression. It's not something you can switch off. So you're really, really, really sensitive to it. And so that means you're going to gravitate towards justice and to a just world and creating a just environment. So if you can cultivate this and be in a space where you feel whole, then you can be of service in that direction to create a more just and aligned and connected world. Whereas if you are overwhelmed, this is why a lot of the time people who are HSP end up in trauma environments, traumatic relationships, sometimes going into addictions, going into unhealthy environments because of the fact that they are a bit lost in the experience of the way the world is, and they're not understood. And so it's really important to identify and know and then regulate with these practices as a starting point, and to understand how to really become this superpower, this person of, what I call a superpower. So I'm going to just pause that for a little bit because I'm just rambling on at you. Now, I would love to find out how you're experiencing that, if you have any experiences around that, if you have any questions around that at all, and just kind of banter on it a little bit if you've got anything to share, if you feel like sharing. No. Yes.
I think it's really interesting what you were saying about how much we absorb when we're communicating with people, because I've often found that I get distracted with what's with what's coming off the person or around the person, or their eyes, or I'm seeing something else. And yeah, I've always thought it was because I wasn't being present enough. But yeah, that was really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point. And that is part of the information as well, is that there is this feeling of being distracted and being not present. And it is that there is a lot of information coming in. And so, yes, we're trying to listen to the words, but maybe some of the other information that's coming in is actually louder And so then we're like, well, I can't engage with these words in this way because you're telling me something else, or I'm perceiving something else, or I'm distracted by your face is saying something different to your words. So your energy is saying something different to your words. And so then it is distracting. It is hard to stay present. And obviously, if you're in an environment or with a person where you could speak to that, and you could say, well, okay, I'm picking up this. Does this resonate at all? And it may not, because they may not be aware of it, or, it just may not be what they're feeling, but it is worthwhile if we can. Be great if we could communicate on that level.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
yeah, exactly. Go to a shop and say, how much is this? They say $3. Is it really $3? I feel like it's not really $3. Yeah. Well, anything else? Yeah, what I do want to share is, moving forward from this, is I have a little group container that I really, really love. And this is the environment where we can be ourselves in this sort of environment. So what this is Soul Space. And Soul Space is like a community container. And this is where we can like have all these deep dive discussions. We're around like-minded people. What I do is I do hot seat coaching. So there's like coaching opportunities so that we can sort of work through the certain things, whatever's come up, that sort of thing. We also do like a monthly challenge to work together. So maybe we'll do like a journaling challenge or a meditation challenge or a fasting challenge or a workout challenge. The reason we do that, again, is to constantly keep nudging the needle, but also to understand this multi-dimensional optimization so that we are able to be at a really high functioning level of life experience, not just on the energetic level or mindset level, but on a physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and spiritual level. So we also have resources. So there is a platform where you can, join in or do some yoga classes, some meditations. There's some fitness sessions on there, and that's a growing platform as well. So it's a really good container. It's a good platform to find your community. Let's go. I'm going to the next one. Isn't going to. I think it's because I wouldn't let it. I restarted it. So let's try again here. Okay, so we have, for like I said, coaching, all of that. And so what I'm doing is, just for today, it's a $59 a month coaching program, and instead of $99 a month, and we'll sort of go for at least 3 months so that you can get a feel for it and you can actually have that growth. And anybody who joins up after this, and I'll obviously send a follow-up email, will actually get the first month free. So you're going to get at least 4 months for that as well. So that's one thing that I'm really proud of and excited about, to be able to really work with all of us who feel aligned in this way. And then the other thing, my program is Soul Mastery, and this is a one-on-one program. So this is working with your soul blueprint, and this really powerful too from an HSP perspective, because it gives us a clarity on who am I in this field of all sorts. And there's like 5 master keys that we work with, and it gives you an idea on what your blueprint is, so that you have a clarity as you maneuver through the world of like, what are your non-negotiables? What is it that you need in order to stay in that alignment as you move through this field of information? Those of us who are more sensitive and receiving so much input, it helps if we have real clarity on what's ours and what isn't ours. And the 5 master keys really give us a clarity of like, this is your soul blueprint. So those are the non-negotiable keys that give you guidance in this world, and it helps you to navigate. And it just gives you a real grounding of like, okay, this is who I am and this is what the world is. And it gives you that distinction. So Thank you very much for that. And I hope it was a little bit helpful. As I mentioned, I just wanted to really share this because I found it super fascinating. I find it's absolutely helpful for myself and for clients. And it's something I'm going to delve into a little bit more. So there will be more information, both in I'm going to do a podcast on it, as well as follow-up webinar. Let me know, would you be interested in more info on this, delving into a little bit deeper? Yes. Feel free to unmute.
On the HSP you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Everything that you said today or covered, I've had to navigate my way through my whole life. It's actually very emotional for me.
It is emotional. It is. It's massive because it's like, it's a huge thing to recognize and see those painful experiences and to see that, are we understood? And this is why I think it's so important for people to understand this and to understand the superpower in it, so that we recognize it for as we bring children into this world, as we work with other people, especially a lot of the children. Actually, as there's a lot of children being born at the moment who are heightened awareness. And that's why I think that 1 in 5 is going to be a big difference, because when we look at the children that are being born now and some of the children that we're experiencing, and the sad thing is how many people are being put on medication and things like that to diminish their sensitivity level so that they can function better in the world that we've created that we're not even happy with. And so there is so much. It's such a contradictory environment, because here we are living in this beautiful world that we aren't appreciating. And then there is all this messaging of gratitude and appreciation and be happy with what you've got or whatever and all this sort of thing. However, are we living it to this degree? This is what I am so passionate about, is like, there is the surface level of, oh, I'm so grateful and I'm so happy. And what does happiness mean? And how do you find happiness? And then there is living where every day can bring you to tears of joy and appreciation and beauty and gratitude and the smallest things. This is the gift of being an HSP, that the details, the smallest things, you can look at the smallest things and just be in awe and overwhelmed with gratitude and appreciation. The slightest conversation, interactions with people. I mean, if we can raise your frequency, be completely grounded in yourself and know how to navigate yourself in this life and set yourself up in this life so that you are able to have a grounding, have a stability, have a base, then you can go into this world and see only beauty and then to live like that. And so what a gift to be able to live with such heightened awareness of what we have here and living in magic. There is magic everywhere. And so then if we can even, first of all, teach our children that, so that the next generation of people, you cannot be destructive and be aggressive and be separate and in this duality and in this division. You cannot be like that if you're an HSP, because you are connected. You are part of that person. You're experiencing them and everything. So what an amazing and magical world we could create if we cultivated this level of sensitivity, and that we actually created an environment or a world where that was an option, where that was possible. Be a whole different space. So yeah, I think it's really helpful if we have an understanding of what is this, and that we gave permission for it, as opposed to telling people stop being so sensitive and you're so dramatic, and oh, you feel too much, or you're so serious in your conversation. Why do we have to go so deep? And let's
What's
just
response to that when people do that? I get that all the time.
what, that they say you're too sensitive, or
What's your response to that?
well, I'm pretty happy with my HSP, so I'm just like, I have no desire to have a surface conversation, and like I say, sensitivity is a superpower. So I'm just like, I just, welcome to my world is what I say.
Okay.
Welcome to my world. It's like little things like, say, back, when you go somewhere and people are actually on drugs. And then they're all of a sudden they're like experiencing, oh my God, it's so beautiful. Look at this. And I'm like, welcome to my world. Like, you don't need to do drugs in my world. This is how it is. It's like that. This psychedelic sensitivity and experience and seeing is a reality, and you can live it every day. And it's like, yeah, welcome to my world. It's like, it's a joy.
Yeah, but it is because it's a derogatory response that I'm hearing from people. So welcome to my world is empowering. However, it's sort of just validating that what they're saying about me, there's something wrong.
And also, can we change the internal dialogue that they're not necessarily saying that there's something wrong? They're just reflecting that actually you're perceiving things different to me. I'm not seeing it that way. You're so sensitive. You're so deep.
I see it as a put down. I've heard it my whole life.
And at times it may have been intended that way. And obviously, being a sensitive, that you can pick up the intention. However, being a super empowered sensitive, we can also like choose that, knowing the world we live in, knowing the world that we're choosing to create, knowing that the world that was created by those who had that put down is in that intention, not necessarily those people, but by being insensitive, we created a lot of what we see right now that we don't like. And so by being sensitive, it's the antidote to that. And so when we get that feedback, we're like, do you want to learn how? You could, it's like, do you want to know?
That's good. I like that too.
Yeah, and I actually feel sorry for people who are going to say those sorts of things, because I'm like, wow, they must miss out on so much life.
Absolutely. And
Like
and
I said before about all the little things and the beautiful, I mean, if they're going to even comment like that, then I'm like, well, you're just missing out.
And
Yeah,
it's easy to say, because of course, like if you've lived that your whole life and you're grown up that way, and there's people in your life, then it is challenging, because are you being seen? Are you being, like you, and yeah, and I know that you've created a community around you where there is more opportunity to be seen, but it's like, am I being seen? Is my soul being seen? Am I safe to expose myself completely? And that's a big deal.
Yeah, this is very good. Thanks, Sankalpa. It's I've never been able to talk to anyone about it. So here I am 59 and still it's an issue for me. It should be sorted by now. I've tried to fit into their world my whole life.
Yeah.
And I've had enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, welcome here. Like anytime, you know me, anytime. It's totally,
Your coaching. So I see that you said there were 5. You used human design, numerology, and what other?
well, no. So what I was mentioning about that is that there are different ways that we can understand ourselves better, right? And we can understand our blueprints. So there might be, like, say, numerology helps sometimes for people to understand, oh yeah, that makes sense. Human design is another way, going, oh yep, that makes sense. I am that, I am this. This is called the Soul Master Keys, and it's a different way again. But I find it really, really powerful, because what I found is with clients and myself myself as well, is when we discover our 5 main soul master keys, there is this exhalation, because there is this like, oh, okay, this is a non-negotiable. So then it's not a matter of, oh, should I be more like that? Oh, should I be pursuing that? Oh, maybe I'm supposed to embody that. But when we have this clarity of like, cool, you do you, this is who I am, these are my non-negotiables, and this is how I navigate through life, this is what's important for me. And then from that place of certainty, I can now go out into the world having a real solid foundation of this is the soul blueprint that this temporary incarnation has got. And I've got clarity on who I am, what I've brought into this lifetime, what my soul journey is, and my intention in this lifetime. So now I have this clarity, and from that solid foundation, I can go out and explore the world, you know, and engage with all these other souls who are on different missions and journeys. And it's really cool because from a sensitive perspective, I can tap into some of their journey, I can experience some of their journey, and I can get a glimpse of their journey truly because I can perceive it, but I don't take it on as my journey anymore. Whereas before I'd jump off my path because I'm like, oh, that feels good to me. That feels aligned to me, because of course it feels aligned to me because I'm a sensitive. So I can jump into their meat suit almost. I can embody their reality. And now I'm on that path, and then I can embody that path. And so it just throws you around like a leaf in the wind. Whereas like when we have real clarity of like, this is my grounding and my path, and I'm so aligned and clear about who I am and what my journey is. And now I can navigate the world and enjoy everybody else's path and journey and perceive it all, and maybe be of support and encouragement and help them to have some clarity on their path. And then we just imagine if we lived in a world where every single soul had real clarity about what they're here to do, and we don't feel threatened by other people's journey. We're not telling other people that you should be living my way because it's like your journey, my journey. And we just kind of really enjoy the uniqueness of everybody's path and journey. And we're just walking around going, wow, that's a cool way to express. Look at the way I'm expressing this. And then we just like have this really colorful, you know, this is typical HSP talk, rainbows and butterflies. But it's possible. It really is possible if we just understand why and how we do that, you know, and we need a blueprint, we need structure, and this is another thing with HSPs, we need structure, because otherwise we do just float around like leaves in the wind. So this is where the pillars come in. Like we need the solid foundation. This is where the things like the biohacking stuff comes in, because it grounds us in the body. We're physically strong and fit, and we're vitalized. And then we have clarity around like, okay, what is mine and what is yours? And then we have an energetic understanding of like, okay, cleansing, almost energetic hygiene. And then having an awareness of like, okay, where are we at on a spiritual journey? And how do we then navigate that? So, yeah. And that's kind of what my soul space is, just a space where we can, it's almost like, you know, a little hub, a little ashram, a little club, a little gym, whatever it is. It's just come together, and this is how we go on the journey. And then soul mastery is more about like personal journey of like development of like, okay, what is my soul blueprint? And that's just a 5-session container. Yeah. And yeah.
Because I did a 3-year diploma in astrology in my early 20s. I've been searching so many times.
I know.
Yeah, 6 planets in Pisces. It's very challenging.
No, I know. You do have an interesting, you do have an interesting blueprint.
I do. But that sounds really interesting. So there's more on your website about that, or I can have a...
Yeah, it's still developing a little bit more, but I'll send you some more details anyway.
Yeah, so. Right, on both, yes.
Yeah, I will. So hopefully this was helpful. This was an intro, obviously, and I'll let you know about more information. Like I said, I find it really interesting and fascinating myself, and doing the research for this webinar really inspired me to go, wow, this really is a thing. So it's helpful for us all. So thank you.
That was cool. Thank you, Sankalpa.
Thank you. Did
Thanks,
you?
yeah, very good.
Yeah, I'll give you some more. Thank you, Phil. Hopefully that was helpful for you as well. I know that you're coming at it from a different angle.
Very good, thank you. Saved me. I really appreciate the fact that you've done a lot of the groundwork that I would have had to do, Googling and rabbit holes. And
I will
trying to
stay
find
tuned
out.
because there's more to come.
I will. And Gail, you remind me of a lot of my clients who have chronic illness, and they have a sense, they got very young in their very early on, that they were the wrongs, there was something wrong with them. They were the broken ones.
Mm.
But it's out there that's broken, not in there.
Ah,
It's out there that's broken, not in here.
oh, thank you. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. And getting that sense of worth back, really get a sense of worth is where it stems from.
And this is the right time.
Mm.
This is why I think it's so powerful for people to be empowered with this information, because we need this tipping of the scales in that direction. We need the sensitivity, we need to move in that direction, because like you say, there's so many people with chronic illness, with mental illness, with, in lack of value and self-worth, and because the world tells them that they're too sensitive, or they haven't got it right, or they need to conform. And we probably can all tell stories of being told to conform at school or other things. And yes, there are the few that excel in those environments, but I would say that it's actually the minority, not the majority, that excel in those environments. And if we gave people more flexibility to express themselves and to be themselves, then it'd be a different world. So sounds like you're part of the crew, shifting and nudging the needle.
It's amazing how much, because my life journey, the family forever, you're too sensitive, you're too that my whole life. So it's amazing when we kind of understand that is our superpower. What a shift.
And there is a difference, there is, like, when we talk about astrology, when we talk about soul blueprints, everybody's different. So 6 houses in Pisces makes it a lot. 6 planets in Pisces makes it a little bit harder than, like, say, if you've got some Saturn or Jupiter or whatever else, and you've got this, and so then you've got some fire in there, and so you sort of have a little bit more ability to go, oh yeah, whatever, and carry on and become a creative photographer, amazing, and be able to channel that, what you see and all of those things. However, we're all on a different path. Every sensitive has a different thing to experience. And so some people get sick, and some people go into the care, and some people become coaches, and some people are creative, and some people, have mental health issues. And so it's really great. Those of us who understand can be of support to the rest of it. And we kind of almost, I imagine this whole sort of tribe of people coming out of the woodwork, and all the sensitives coming together to be of service and shift this world and tip it into, if all the sensitives are healed, what a world could we live in? Be amazing.
That's amazing. That's really exciting. I find that quite exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
The way you articulate it, the way you yeah.
Division of it. Yeah. Cool. Well, I will follow up, and then we might do a HSP superpower part 2, and start to create a real shift in people who need it, and be of support in that shift. Raise the frequency.
How often does the community get together, the soul community?
It's a fortnightly live session, and then there's also an online chat and all that sort of stuff, and there's ongoing connection, and then there's also the platform and stuff like that. So it's a newly started, so it's still a growing community, but we kind of just, again, we're finding all the sensitives and dropping them in there, and building it together. So very good.
So email through about
I'll send some details.
All right, Sankalpa.
Amazing. Thank you, Phil. And I will stay in touch, and I'll give you some more updates and information. And thank you all for your time.